I'm surprised that a lot of CIO jobs still exist because it is changing. Most traditional companies expect a CIO to be a bridge between technology and business. Previously, people fall into the trap of command and control. It's impossible to make that call because technology is changing so fast. Everybody's job requires technology.
How did you used to think about build versus buy versus partner, and how do you think people should think about it today in AI?
I will be very careful with data. People are going to the cloud, putting all the data with the AI, LLMs, and so on. You lose your differentiation after a while.
What advice would you give younger leaders today?
You can't get anything without.
Bask, it's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time. Just to dive right in, you've had such an impressive background. Could you tell the audience for 2 minutes your kind of career arc, how you wound up CIO for so many amazing companies? And then I have a ton of questions about CIO and AI.
I was pretty much a businessman. I started my career selling refrigerators and air conditioners. Then accidentally, I came into this country to study computer science, and computer science just took off. I came into Florida Tech, and I started working for NASA early, and that's the whole computer industry has gone up. So it was very difficult to get back into business. I mean, no complaints, just because my career took off. So I spent about a third of my career in large companies like Johnson and Johnson, GlaxoSmithKline, Honeywell, etc., in the East Coast largely and Midwest. And then the last 15 years or 20 years, I've been in the West Coast. I've been working with companies like VMware, Dell, Juniper Networks, etc. So the combination of, as I've been a CIO, global CIO for large enterprise companies, and then these typical startups, which are startups no more because they've grown so big, these days. And then, I think the last couple of years or so, I have my own company. I do boutique consulting on digital transformation with AI, mainly bridging the traditional companies with the startup companies in Silicon Valley. So I'm an advisor to about a dozen companies or so in AI, like, Zoom, Cohesity, ThoughtSpot, Automation Anywhere, and a few others that, you wouldn't know the names, but that's kind of what I do now.
So before we got into what makes a great one, what's your definition? What does a CIO actually do? It's one of those titles we hear, but it's very different from Honeywell to VMware to Dell to J&J. What is a CIO's core job?
I was one of the first few CIOs. There was no such titles as CIOs. Typically, when my career started, they typically took the most technical person in the company and they put him in that job. And so initially, it started off as a technical person who can make decisions on what to buy for the companies, etc. And then it's transitioned. When I was in the company like Honeywell, they wanted a general manager who knows technology, right? They didn't want a technologist, but they wanted somebody who's a business person who can do technology. And then, for a large company, you need leadership, right? It's you're working with presidents of companies and CEOs of companies and so on, and they smell weakness if you're not if you're not there. So you have to make sure it's a lot of leadership things that is required. And most East Coast companies or most traditional companies expect a CIO to be a bridge between technology and business. That's how they look at it. They look at a leadership team member. And there are hardly any other person these days everybody knows IT, so they all believe they are CIOs. But typically in a Fortune 50 companies, you are the technology leader for the company, expect to lead it, and the board has to take in charge. There are some serious stuff too. You have to manage cost, you have to manage the security aspects of it. You are the single point to choke if something happens on your e-commerce site or things like that. But there's a lot of creativity and things that you do too. In the West Coast, in Silicon Valley, your founder has got a PhD in computer science. So he or she knows more than you do. And so the role is it's different. You don't try to go compete with the person on who's technical. You have to have the modesty and humility to say, hey, this person knows what he's doing. But you bring your strengths to the table. I normally say in a technology company, and some of the technology CEOs have challenged me, and I always explain to them to say, listen, there's, if you go to a music store, the guy who runs the music store can play all instruments. They can play the guitar, the keyboards, etc., drums, etc. But they are not Eric Clapton, So I am Eric Clapton is what I tell them. This is what I do for a living. I may not be the inventor, I may not be this, but I'm the person who's responsible for your security and so on. So we're not trying to compete on who knows what better, but you got to charge. And I do it jokingly, so but you have to land a point because everybody in technology company do believe that they know better than you, and they do.
And also, it's gotten easier with the cloud, or it seems easier with the cloud now, right? It's not like the real old days.
No, no, and I think those are some of the things that has changed, Russ. Is previously people fall into the trap of command and control, and I make all the decisions, etc. And it's impossible to make that call because technology is changing so fast. Everybody's job requires technology. Even the finance job requires technology. HR jobs require technology, not just the product development. So you become more like a mentor collaborator right now, rather than say, "Hey, thou shalt not do this and thou shalt do this." The style doesn't work.
So, as you think about kind of organizational design, especially as it relates to AI, which is now everyone's trying to retrain their global workforce all at once with a new set of tools that didn't exist 6 weeks ago in some cases, and didn't exist 3 years ago in all cases. Uh, and then you have these concerns about job displacement and what's going to automate my job. How are people going to lose jobs? You have people caring about cost, people caring about security. What do you think the relationship will look like in the future for CIOs, CFOs, and heads of HR? I thought those are really the three key roles that are going to be impacted, especially at larger companies, or really going to have to change the way they work together. So if you think about your experience, how did you used to work with head of HR versus how would you imagine a CIO today has to work with a head of HR and CFO?
I have always worked very closely with the CFO and the head of HR. It's pretty important positions because the CEO is looking at them as their chief of staff to say, get the job done. Because I have to worry about sales and customers and other things. Don't come and bother me with all the stupid things that I need to do. So I think it's good to have a good collaboration anyway, regardless of what you do. But as you put in more and more AI, organizations are going to be redefined. I mean, the HR job becomes very complicated. At the same time, HR job is being replaced, right? I mean, I can see a future where there are not the HR specialists and even IT specialists or finance specialists. A lot of the back office administrative jobs, AI is coming after. It's already there. I'm actually not surprised that a lot of CIO jobs still exist because it is changing. So the role is so in most jobs that if you're doing help desk support, that is going to go because people are going to just go and search. It's a lot easier to search and
Right,
find
right. Claude,
than going
Claude
into
is going
your.
to tell me,
the-
right, sure,
Cloud is going to tell you you're not going to go into your service now and search for how do I fix this, right?
right.
So I think those jobs are gone, but I think the jobs that remain are jobs that are require human intelligence or EQ, right? I mean, collaboration, collaborative. That's where cloud has not caught up yet. Even though it acts like a very friendly company, sometimes it gives you advice that's totally wrong, but it's very confidently tells you
Well, that like a lot of coworkers.
like a lot of code. Exactly. I mean, you actually cannot knock AI because I can find other bad examples in humans. But I think a good CIO and a good HR and a CFO will come together to redefine the organization from who should we have, what should be the function of GNA, who are the critical people, and then also governance and other kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's tough enough to know how many people work for you, who are the consultants, who are the contractors, who are full time, who's showing up to work, who's a contingent worker, all this kind of categories. We still haven't gotten a hold of that in a large company. Now you have robots and the different bots running around and so on. And I'm thinking, well, do you know how many of these are running your organization, making critical decisions? Who's in charge of them? Who owns them? Who updates them? What if one of them is talking to another one and being like agents? This agent is talking to the other agent, and all of a sudden your e-commerce site doesn't work, or you're discounting your goods by 30-40%. And who made the call? Did the marketing person made the call? Did the finance guy made the call? Did somebody made the change? A lot of times the agent would make the call, right, and say, it's Thanksgiving, Amazon has already dropped the price, let's drop our price by 30%. That's a valid call. But if it does something really bad and you're losing out on revenue or op income, so do you know who the bots are, who authorized them, and how it worked, and so on. So I think this is going to require a combination of these three individuals primarily.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're going to have the merging of kind of human worker and the tools they use alongside digital worker. And that's just going to force more collaboration between CIOs and heads of HR. Just there's no other option.
And the nice thing is none of us really know the answer, which makes us work together, right? Yeah, I can't assume.
I'm curious if you think about, 20 years ago versus today, how did you used to think about build versus buy versus partner on, technology needs versus today? You see, on the one hand, a lot of companies deeply partnering with, with Anthropic or with Google or with Microsoft or whomever on the AI side. You'll see that. You certainly see a lot of companies think about, no, we need to build our own. We need to have our own model. We need to build our own context. We need to really be locked down. Like, how did you used to think about build versus buy versus partner, and how do you think people should think about it today in AI?
Yeah, I think previously, especially if you're not in a tech company, if you're in a company like Honeywell, your job is to get the best tool at the best price to get the job done. So whether it's make or buy, it's a simple decision. If I can do it in 2 days and it takes 4 days to do it with the vendor, I'll do it myself or cost half the time, half the money. So generally, you did a lot more buy uh, because it was not your job or you didn't have the people to keep building several of the tools. So most of the times, whether it's email, calendaring, ERP, you bought a lot of tools, including hardware and so on. I think as you go further and further and further now into it, it looks to me like you don't really have to buy a monolithic large system like we used to. You can buy these systems that does specific agents, right? So now you have to be clever. Are you buying an entire enterprise management system? Or are you just buying something does accounts payable? If it's accounts payable, we can create an agent for that. You see a bill and pay a bill and have some rules. So you really need this monolithic, $1 million system to just handle your accounts payable or expense reporting. So I think you're going to look at more agentic kind of work that is being done, and you'll have your own folks do it because it's not rocket science. Like you were saying, I love programming. I got out of programming because you didn't pay enough money and it got boring after a while. It's just too many languages and things to remember. But now I love programming. I said, this is easy. You just have to ask questions and it tells you what to do. And it's kind of like solving a problem. I mean, just like a Sudoku puzzle. So I'm thinking, wow, programming is fun again. So I think now you're going to have more agentic stuff. So you're going to do a little bit of build. The partnership is I will be very careful with data. So people are going to the cloud, putting all the data with the AI, LLMs, and so on. You lose your differentiation after a while. So I would be very cautious about. First of all, I'm thinking even computing. I'll do hybrid computing. I won't put everything on the cloud. Now, if I'm a startup, I put everything on the cloud. But then as I grow bigger, right? And I'm thinking, wow, should I really put everything on the cloud? And especially data, what is proprietary data? And then you have to make some calls on certain agents, like I described a simple agent like accounts payable. I'm sure somebody's going to write that already, or if it's not already there, just buy that, right? Don't have to write it.
There is an interesting question, actually. I'm curious how you'd think about this. I know a lot of your more recent career has been partnering with companies that are startups in the early stage and helping them grow, pre-AI and certainly post-AI, helping them figure out how to sell to someone like you. How do I partner with CIOs? So a big question that every VC in Silicon Valley is worried about today is fundamentally you've seen explosive growth of these AI startups. The truth is, what folks know is that what you've seen is explosive growth of lots of proofs of concept, right? You're seeing giant organizations that used to move very slow because of the fear of being left behind in AI, which I know you've talked about in the past, are actually now moving very quickly to do lots of pilots. And so you have this interesting conundrum when you're a VC of, on the one hand, you're seeing a company growing faster than they've ever seen it grow, any company ever, on the one hand. On the other hand, all the revenue is brand new, and these are all pilot deals. So how do you think about that world as a CIO, where CIOs today have had to kind of develop a whole new muscle around trying a lot? CIOs today are trying things at a volume for new vendors that they've never done before. So how do startups do a great job partnering with CIOs to give themselves the best chance that that pilot with Toyota becomes a long-term relationship with Toyota?
Yeah, I mean, I advise two things. Is one is a little humility in the sense most of the CEOs, the founders, are super bright. Right? I mean, they are all very clever. There's no doubt. Unfortunately, a lot of them know it too. And the what I tell them is, you're very good, but you've started a company and you worked in the same zip code. You've not even left the zip code. So you need to have a little curiosity to partner with a CIO outside of Silicon Valley. Go to the East Coast, go to the rest of the world, and learn the business problem. Don't assume that you can build and they'll come. The product validation part. So I spend a lot of time on make sure the product is validated. It's something they want. Do that, and they do. But I think you have to shock them a little bit to say, dude, you got to go out and do it. Don't talk to your Silicon Valley friends and everybody else and assume you know the problem, but because you really don't know the problem well. I do the same thing with the CIOs on the other side as well to say, listen, don't bet on the same existing company all the time, right? I mean, if you're going to make a decision with to go to Salesforce or one of those companies, you are going to meet the salesperson. That's about it, right? I mean, you're not going to meet the top people. I mean, you may see them for 1 minute, but they're not going to be interested in your project. $1 million project is not a big deal for those companies. So I said, come down. Yes, it is a new company. It's not known. It's in Silicon Valley, but these are two bright people. The CEO and the founder and the co-founder, the CTO, is going to work on the project for you. You never have that luxury ever because soon they're going to become big and they're going to have 30 other customers and they're going to behave like everybody else. So I tell them, take that risk where you're working with some really clever people who are trying to solve the problem and they think of your problem as the most important problem for them because they want to get it done. And to that, take some risks. So I see a lot of CTOs, CIOs. They do come and talk to the startups, but they never take a chance. I mean, they're still talking about should I do a prototype, whatever. It's a subscription model. It's $600 for license or $60 for licenses. Just buy the damn thing and use it. Put some money in, put some skin in the game, and take a chance. Is what I say. And two things happen. Is one is you kind of push the envelope and see what your requirements are and what is missing, and you get the very top folks to work. And I have profited from some of the companies since I've taken a chance early. I got these licenses for next to nothing and forever, right? Russ, I mean, I know you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. If I partner with you early and I get a product and say you become huge, you're never going to drop me. You're going to remember me for life.
100%. Yes, there's nothing better for startups. Look, the ideal relationship is always startups with a large company where it turns out everyone bet right and you wind up with these very long-term partnerships for sure. I imagine, to your Mark Benioff story from earlier, I imagine he still picks up the phone for his first 5 clients, even if they're not Salesforce's largest clients today.
He does. I don't blame him either. I mean, there's a scale issue, but he'll always pick up the phone for the first 5 people, right? He never forgets them.
So, how do you think about the companies that are the large companies that are working with AI well? Is it CIO driven? Is it they set up an office for AI transformation, digital transformation? Is it happening at the department level where the head of sales is picking tools that he needs for his team? Like it's an extremely complicated world where if you were a CIO, my guess is you could spend every week with every minute of your calendar filled with 30-minute slots just to meet a new vendor you would never heard of all day every day. You'd never get anything done. So how should companies be doing this? Because you can't try everything. Forget that much of it is useless. You just can't try everything. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think you put some discipline in your calendar. Say every Friday, whatever, you have an open innovation day or something, right? I mean, Friday afternoons, if you're on the East Coast, typically could be a little lighter. It's still Friday morning in the West Coast, so you can always get some startups to come and tell what they're doing. How are they solving the problem? What it does is two things. Is one is I typically try to get my whole team to come and attend those things, and some of my team members have complained when I've set it up because they said it's a waste of time. I don't have time for this nonsense, whatever. But after I left the company, almost everyone has come and thanked me for it, right? They say, "Oh, Bask, you forced me to get out of that and go and see this new vendor, and that opened my eyes." But they never admitted that at that time. So I think it's a good team building thing. It's a good one for the whole company to be innovative without investing money or getting a VC funding. I mean, I would be nice to just pick your brain for half an hour, and I don't have to invest in your company.
I'm curious what you think of this. I've spent my whole career selling things to large companies. And to your point, one of the things you see with founders is, as you say to your founders, you have advice of go out there and go out and understand what it's actually like to work at J&J. On the other side, a thing I've seen frequently from people that have spent their whole career at large companies is, look, when you're at a company like J&J, or you're at a company like Honeywell, or you're at a company like IBM, it is actually very possible for you to spend your entire life only dealing with other people that work at that same company, which just isn't a great way to grow your overall knowledge of the world.
Exactly. I mean, I think you're dead right. I always tell people when I was in Honeywell, I knew the 120,000 people in Honeywell well. That's how I felt. I knew everybody, not one person outside of the company. There's just no time. So when I work in the Silicon Valley companies, I don't know everybody in my company, even though I
No, you
work for
know
smaller
everybody else. Of
companies.
course, that's Silicon Valley.
You everybody, yeah, wow, the reverse is true. And for both networking, career development, professional development, I think the latter is better. And so somehow you have to get to a situation where you have that network above and beyond. So I tell CIOs to, that's why I tell them, reach out. It's very, it's helped me, it'll help you, and then it'll help your team members a lot to do. And likewise, I coach the founders too. I mean, you've done this for a long time, so you're comfortable. But a lot of founders starting now just do a Zoom call or an audio call because it's convenient and it works fine. So I tell them just take the plane and go. I know it's a pain in the ass, but Honeywell is calling. It's okay. Just go, right? And spend. Yeah, it's a waste of whole day, and you could have done it more efficiently in half an hour. And I know you all work from home. I understand all this logic, but just go the amount of learning you get by walking a factory or walking a distribution center. You can never get so I think so both sides have to come a little closer together. I think then you look at Europe. I mean, I'm just talking East Coast, West Coast, but then you look at Europe. That has to spend more time, and here the innovation is happening in Silicon Valley, and I may exaggerate it, but a lot of Silicon Valley, Israel, and a lot in like Bangalore. Like three places. You have to be in those three places somehow if you want to be in technology, right?
So, how do you think about one other kind of thing you've spoken about in the past? And it feels like it's becoming a much bigger issue now when I've spoken to CIOs, is they have this feeling, or this feeling is pushed on them from their CEOs, that every CEO feels like they're way behind. Every CEO feels like their competitors now are using AI better, are cutting costs better, are selling more, are acting more efficiently. If you think about over your career, there's been other points of giant technological dislocation. What's the best way you found to work with very smart, hard-charging CEOs to help them understand what's actually happening in the market? Are we behind or not? And frankly, should we just take a deep breath? How should you think about digital transformation at a time where everybody feels behind, where every analyst wants to understand what's your plan with ChatGPT to lay off half your employees or to triple your sales or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question because the best CIOs are also very opinionated. I mean, that's why they make a good, and that's what makes them bad CEOs as well, because, sometimes you need strong opinions and the ability to drive and can work both ways. So you can't go to most CEOs and say, hey, this is, this is too early. And
Right. We're not behind. You're wrong. Right.
yeah, so yeah, you're wrong. That's not going to work. They're going to talk to the CFO or somebody else and say, my guy is not that good. In fact, a lot of CEOs now are calling me. Previously, a lot of CEOs used to call and they will say, "My IT guy is behind on budgets and blah blah blah. Can you be a mentor, coach, or whatever?" I mean, people who know me. Now they are saying, "Hey, my IT guy is great. He's handling his projects, but I don't feel like I'm going fast. So should I hire a chief digital officer? Should I hire a chief AI officer? Should I hire a consultant?" And I always tell them, well, first you have to give the person a chance. I mean, you have to be very clear what you want, and you don't want to have two heads of HR, two heads of IT. I don't believe in two of these jobs, but some companies just say, let the IT guy just run the systems, and let's hire a chief AI officer. I would rather replace the person if he's not good or she's not good than get one person. So that's some counsel I tell most of the boards or the CEOs is to say is either your person is good and you have to give him a chance, or you got to replace him. You can't have three people because they all will come and say something to it. But one of the things I have done with the CEOs that worked is I typically, instead of saying no, I came with a framework for success. So I said, oh, you think so and so LLM is going to replace 50% of your workforce. Let's put it to test. Here's the framework. Here's the pilot. Here's what we're going to do. And I want your CFO and other people in this project. I want you to be involved. and then go through and say, did we eliminate, so then at one way you're doing the right thing, giving it a proper test. So you're not just doing a head nod, right? And then secondly, uh, if it works, you give the credit to the whole team. It's not you who found a cool new tool, right? And honestly, the job elimination, those kind of transformation, it's not a one-person job. I mean, if the head of a CFO or the HR person or the head of procurement does not want to change, no system is going to fix it. So I always come up with a framework to say, okay, let's assume that this is right, but and I call it pretotype. It's like prototyping, but pretotyping. Let's assume it's right, but what would prove it as quickly as possible? So we have 1 month to prove if this thing will reduce 50% of our workload or not. Right? We're not going to spend 9 months trying to see or 10 months trying to see if it does. So we're going to accelerate and run it. What is the criteria? What should you do? And that seems to work because halfway through, 50% of the time, the CEO himself will say, "I don't think this is working," right? Which is what you want to do rather than you saying it doesn't work. Or it has been successful too.
We had a dinner recently with about 20 CIOs, and they all told some version of the following story. So I'm curious how you think about this, which is they decided they were going to do these AI tests. So they bought a bunch of AI software and they deployed it everywhere. And all the business leads that they had, bought the software for came back and said, "This is making us way more productive. This is amazing. Thank you. This software is great. Renew. I need more. This is making us way more productive." And the CFO said, "Great. To pay for it, we're going to cut 15% of your headcount." No, 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 no. We're not ready to do that. It's like, well, is it making you more productive or is it not? Like, are you going to have a higher revenue number? No. Are you going to have a lower cost number? No. You just
No,
want to have
that's
a
not
lower
a
gross
real
margin
project.
forever? Like, what really is the
Yeah.
plan here with all of these tools?
The truth is somewhere in the middle, but I think the CEOs and CFOs have to call the bluff, right? This cost avoidance I always had an issue with. Almost everybody says it's wonderful, and then what they say is even worse is, uh, yeah, I can't reduce people, but what happens is I used to work all Sundays and Saturdays, and now I'm working only 5 days a week. All sounds like cost avoidance, right? So to me, the real test is did actual costs come down, or did you produce more revenue for the number of people you have? Uh, so that's what you have to do. Otherwise, what happens? Yes, all these AI tools that I'm using definitely makes my life better. But would I take a 20% cut because now my job is easier? No, no freaking way. I'm going to be protesting. So I think without being too judgmental, I don't want sometimes to be so dogmatic because the tools do work, right? I mean, I remember having in J&J, I think it was very early. I had to go justify email to the CFO, just email. And he was asking me, he made me cry because he made me go through hell to think, what, you think I'm going to type all my email and I've got a message and somehow magically we're going to reduce 3 secretaries and we're going to save so much money because we can send emails? I could not, I mean, and what is the cost of not doing it? He had so many questions that I had no answer for as a young CIO. And I said, okay, if you don't want email, more power to you. So, so you could go to the other extreme, and I tell the CEO, CFOs, and other people to say, hey, there's something real happening now with AI tools. This is real. It is. I do see it reducing the people by 50% productivity gains, but I don't see it now. I see it happening soon, and it's a good time for you to figure it out. Is what I tell them. So I think you have to be that way, but I think at least you should have one person, maybe the CFO or the CEO or somebody be the bad guy and say, where are all the people going? How much money am I is falling to the bottom line? Somebody has to ask the question.
So is obviously you're an AI bull and think these tools really are having an impact. And obviously at Laird, and we believe that and spend a lot of time helping companies measure that value. I'm curious if you think about, yourself 30 years ago, or as you deal with younger people in your various consulting roles, various consulting projects, what advice would you give younger leaders today? Not really CIOs so much, but, younger aspiring CIOs or aspiring heads of HR or aspiring heads of anything in this world of kind of so much technology dislocation. What advice would you give people who've decided they're going to enter this business world in terms of like having a successful career in a world of AI?
I would recommend some risk taking. I feel like my um, colleagues and my comrades are become so risk averse now. right? And so if you look at a CIO, CISO, definition is always a person who doesn't take risk. It's become that bad. And so I'm telling him, you need to be not, you can't get anything without taking risks. There has to be risks that you take. I mean, yes, it's a pretty serious job. You got critical systems, all that stuff is fine, but you got to take risks. And then the second thing I tell him is, uh, don't bet so much on traditional vendors. I mean, it's remember the saying a long time ago was you can never go wrong by choosing an IBM. That thing is still going on with 30 other companies, right? You can never go wrong with ServiceNow. You never go wrong with Salesforce. And so I tell them, especially when you're young, take those chances. Try to attack these systems when you still have energy and other things with agentic AI and other kind of stuff, because the most CIOs are not technical like they used to be. And when I started, you had to be technical. So they go very safe. They say, what does Gartner recommend? Is it in the quadrant or not? Who are the top persons? Who are the top companies I should pick? And I cannot get fired if I choose these five. When you look at your budget, with subscription especially, you're paying so much money to all these large vendors and the cloud vendors and so on. So you have no money left to do anything. So I tell them you need to pick a few and say, what are you going to target? You don't have to, if you do everything your competition is doing, if your competition has ServiceNow, Salesforce, Cisco, Amazon Web Services, whatever, and you have it, what do you really bring to the table? So I tell them don't take on everybody, but you need to figure out which ones you want to take a chance, because that frees up so much of your money to do other kind of innovations to do. So that's one thing I tell them is take some risks that you do. The second thing I tell them is spend some time in Silicon Valley if you haven't spent the time. Get out of the office, go spend the time, learn, build your network and everything. Because the other thing you get in Silicon Valley is when you spend the time there, you can quickly validate. You don't have to have a vendor pitch. You can quickly go and say, is this company real or not? Right? You can have a coffee with somebody, and they'll say Russ is great or Russ is crap. You don't need LinkedIn. You don't need anything for that, right? So
You're right. It doesn't have to be that complicated, right?
yeah. So I think I tell them that. So those two things I do, and the third, the last thing I tell them is, uh, this is general advice. I tell them is, I spent a lot of time in large companies for a long time. And I tell them, don't spend so much time at one company because your learning comes down. So I tell them, 3 years, whatever, you pick a time, because the world is too big, and you need to know. The nice thing again about Silicon Valley is a lot of people have gone from, they work in cloud or Tesla, and they go to another company, they go to Apple. So they bring a lot of knowledge from different companies in. And that is very helpful to both individual and the company. So I tell them, don't get too comfortable in a job. After the third year or so, you will learn everything, right? More or less.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.